Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, which is all about optimizing your hormonal health just for a real boost to make you happier, healthier, and increase that vibrancy. So that's what today's all about. The intention is to help you see this link between nutrition and lifestyle factors and how that really can impact our general well-being and our hormonal balance, and the impact on our health. We want you to be able to leave today's session feeling empowered with some simple tips and action steps that are really easy to implement. So it's not about trying to do everything at once. It's just about getting really good, effective support on how you can boost your health and balance your hormones. You don't have to do everything at once. You can start with just even one or two tips and build on that week by week. And also, we want to welcome any men who might be interested in watching this webinar too, because it's always good to get an insight into female health as well if you're interested. So a little bit about me. My name is Natasha Simmons. I'm a registered nutritional therapist and also a qualified life coach. So I worked 10 years in property before I switched careers and became a nutritionist. Given my time in my previous career, I really understand the pressures that come with working in corporate environments and how there can be limitations at times to being able to put well-being first, to be able to make enough time for yourself because you're juggling so many things. And that's why sessions like today are about helping you understand what key changes you can do that will really have a positive impact. And, like I said before, they don't have to be, doesn't have to be onerous. It doesn't have to be doing everything at once. Small changes can make a huge difference, especially if you build them into your general lifestyle. So today we're going to talk about hormones. We're going to meet our hormones, and we'll just talk about the main ones, and we'll develop on that. We'll talk about this dance that the hormones kind of do. So how this interplay of different hormones that need that, and there needs to be a balance between them. If they're not in balance, it can have an impact on our health. And that's when we'll talk a little bit about what can go wrong, and the factors that can disrupt that balance. And then importantly, we'll talk about this 11-point plan to really help restore and balance your hormonal harmony at any point in any phase in your life. So menstruation, perimenopause, or menopause, any of those points. These nutrition and lifestyle tips can really restore that vitality. So let's meet the hormones. So these are the main hormones that have an impact on your daily and long-term health. Let's look at insulin. You may have heard insulin in terms of diabetes, type 1 or type 2. This is our blood sugar balancing hormone. It's really important for making sure our blood sugars are kept in check. And this, if we don't keep our blood sugars in check, can have a real impact not only on our hormonal health, but our diet and lifestyle. So, and insulin is really important for this. Insulin is also known as the fat storing hormone. So when you eat sugary foods, insulin will come along, and what it will do is it will help transport sugar into the cells, but it will also take any excess sugar away from the blood and store it, but it stores it as fat. So what's really important here is that insulin's important role is to make sure that there is no excess sugar sitting in our bloodstream, because that can be really detrimental for our health. So it'll come along, it'll take the excess sugar, and it'll set it aside thinking, oh, well, this person might need it later because they might, be going out for a run, or they might need to use lots of energy, so they can use that excess sugar later on. However, if we are constantly having sugary foods, processed foods, so for example, like cereals or croissants for breakfast, then moving on to a sandwich for lunch, if we're constantly having white processed foods like that, there's this constant increase of insulin and fat storage going on in the body, and that can have a real impact on not only storing fat, increasing that, but also balancing our hormones as well. So insulin's really important for that. The next one is cortisol. Cortisol is known as our stress hormone. It forms part of our sleep-wake circadian rhythm. It should be high in the morning. We need it to be high to get us out of bed. That's kind of our get up and go. But what really must happen to keep this in balance is that it should then peter off. It should start to level off so that when we go to bed, our cortisol is really low and our melatonin increases to help us then fall asleep and go into that restful state. But if we are constantly stressed, then our cortisol is constantly elevated. And this can have a really serious knock-on effect, not just on sleep, which I've just mentioned, but on lots of different aspects of the body. And that includes our general hormone balance. Thyroid hormone. So this is our master metabolism regulating hormone. If we find our hormone levels are low, our thyroid hormone levels are low. So if you get a blood test done by the GP, if we find it's not working optimally, this can impact our metabolism and cause symptoms such as low mood, weight gain, loss or thinning hair, fatigue, low energy. This is all because our metabolism is not being regulated. And if you do find you have symptoms like this, it could be worth speaking to your GP to then just check your thyroid is working optimally. And there's a lot, we'll talk about the 11-point plan, but there is a lot that we can do to all of these hormones that we're meeting now that we can do to help balance and regulate them. So we're going to cover that today. So let's move on to the female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, and also our male hormone, testosterone. All of these are really important in the right balance, and testosterone included, even though it's the male hormone, it's also important because we produce it and has to be in a certain level. And then we've other hormones like growth hormone, leptin and ghrelin, and all of these play a part in impacting our appetite, our cravings, our weight. And actually, by balancing our blood sugars, which we talked about at the top there, that can have a really positive effect on these hormones such as leptin and ghrelin, and therefore our weight and our cravings. And tiredness generally, and lots of other symptoms, which we will go on to talk about a bit more. So everything that you see here and everything we talk about today will be about supporting, balancing and nourishing these hormones, which will then support you feeling more healthy and vibrant and your body working optimally. So the female hormones are estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone are the two main sex hormones that are doing a dance all throughout the month. And it is normal to feel different at different points in the cycle. It's when those feelings become extreme that it suggests there's an imbalance. So these are common changes that are listed. So for example, appetites, cravings, changes in sleep or energy. This can change and fluctuate throughout the month. Like I said, they should be mild for people, but if they become extreme, it can have a real impact on people's lives. And diet and lifestyle, nutrition and lifestyle can really positively affect this and bring things back into balance. The whole point of our hormones changing, so the estrogen and progesterone ebbing and flowing, is to enable the body to ovulate, to enable pregnancy. Whether you want to get pregnant or not, there should be this ebb and flow, and there should be this ability for the body to ovulate, then release an egg, and then have it ready to be fertilized. And this happens month in, month out until menopause. So let's look at the next graph. This is just a typical menstrual cycle. So this graph shows an average cycle of about 28 days, but it's normal to have a cycle anywhere between 21 to 35 days. During the cycle, levels of estrogen will rise and fall, like what I've just said. So the first half of the cycle is our follicular phase, and that's when estrogen is higher than progesterone, and there's a surge just before ovulation. It's normal at this point to notice changes in appetite. You might be more hungry, energy levels might change, mood might change. In the second half of the cycle is the luteal phase, and that's when progesterone is higher than estrogen. And that's because after ovulation, progesterone gets produced. So there's a surge. This is very, very good. And we really want this to happen. So we want our body to ovulate and then go on to produce progesterone. That's really important. Progesterone's main job is to get the uterus ready for pregnancy after the ovulation. If there's no pregnancy, progesterone levels just drop and you will shed the endometrial tissue in the uterus during your menstrual period. So then the cycle will repeat where estrogen starts to climb and progesterone starts to drop again. So it's very good to monitor your symptoms over your monthly cycle and just understand, where you're sitting, when are you in days 1 to 14 and how do you feel during those days? And just keep an eye on that each month. And you can do that by using different apps or just making a note in a book. Because if you then start to notice extreme changes, that it can give you an indication that actually there might be something else going on. So it's just really good to be a bit in tune with how your body is feeling throughout the month. So let's look at estrogen. Estrogen is stimulating the uterine lining to grow and thicken in preparation for a baby. In a good, healthy amount, it will support good mood, libido, boost our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, boost our dopamine, which is our motivation hormone, and support healthy bones, also support the production of collagen, which is why it's good for skin health and keeping it supple and nice and healthy. Progesterone is higher in the second half, like I just said, because its main job is there to nourish pregnancy. We want healthy levels of progesterone, and therefore our ability to ovulate is super important. And one reason being is that there is this increase in progesterone that follows. So, and we need that to happen because progesterone has many benefits in the right amounts, and we certainly don't want it to be low. It can be our anti-anxiety calming hormone. It's important for overall sense of well-being and good sleep. It boosts metabolism, helps with the development of neurons in the brain, so new brain cells. Progesterone is almost, you could describe it as the yin to estrogen's yang. If we only experience estrogen and not enough progesterone, that's when we have issues with hormonal balance. And it's very important in the right amount because it supports all of these benefits and it even helps build muscle. It's heart health protective and it is a natural diuretic. So all of these things are really, really important. So it's important that there is a balance between this estrogen and progesterone. So your hormones are like a delicate orchestra. This is kind of an analogy to demonstrate the importance of them working together. So if you have a piece of music and you have different instruments playing, if they're playing at the right time, everything sounds perfectly in tune and it works really well and you get a beautiful sound. But if you've got any instruments that are out of tune, it starts to knock the entire piece off. And that's the same with hormones. If there is a hormone that's out of balance, say due to stress that might have a knock-on effect, for example, then this can have a real impact on the rest of the hormones. Some of them might end up being really low. Some of them might end up having to overcompensate. And this just really takes everything out of balance and can have an impact on our health. And like in an orchestra, it will just it would mean that you are not hearing a piece of music that's in tune. So factors that disrupt our hormonal balance. So let's have a look at these. Now, I'm not going to take too much time on them. And that's basically because we're going to really focus on solutions. We're going to really focus on maintenance of hormonal balance and harmony. But it is good to be aware that factors such as stress, and stress being the really big one, which we will touch on, under eating, processed foods, alcohol. These are also areas what we will touch on a bit later on. Digestive health, constipation will feed into an imbalance in hormones. Even some medication and toxins can feed into an imbalance of our hormones as well. So when we look at the 11-point plan, it'll address all of these things. But what we want to do is try and ensure we don't have these disruptors, and we can minimize them as much as possible, because then that will help restore any hormonal imbalance. So the impact of stress, right? We're just going to talk a little bit more about stress, because we've just seen some of the reasons why progesterone is so important. The problem is so many women face too low levels of progesterone in the second part of their cycle, when it should actually be higher. And one of the biggest reasons is stress. So we only produce progesterone after we have ovulated. If someone is not ovulating, this is called anovulation. And this often the biggest contributor of anovulation is stress. If we don't ovulate, we won't produce the progesterone, and then we lose those benefits. So what's happening with too much stress? When you make a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, which are these stress hormones, in response to any stress, the brain will then conclude it's not safe. So what the brain will do is say, right, it's not safe to ovulate. We're not going to release this egg for pregnancy because we've got stress and we need to deal with stress instead. So let's shut down our reproduction system. And that's what it'll do. And it won't just do that for reproduction, it'll also do that for our digestive system, because stress is such a big threat to the body. It will then look to shut down the other systems, because it doesn't want to prioritize them. It wants to deal with the stress. So, and that can be our endocrine system, our digestive system. All of those areas that are really important to keep working, they get set aside, so to speak. And what can happen here is, if ovulation is not happening, progesterone will less likely to be produced, and this can shift you into what is known as estrogen dominance. So low progesterone, but a higher proportion of estrogen will mean that there's this term estrogen dominance. So this can, and what can happen here is you can see this through, mood swings, depression, migraines, low libido, fatigue, weight gain, miscarriages, all an impact of stress on progesterone. So definitely something to really be aware of. The beautiful phases of womanhood. So there are 3 phases, as I talked about a bit earlier on, which are the premenopausal phase, the perimenopausal, and the menopausal phase. So premenopausal is when, we're menstruating regularly from our first period up until we hit perimenopausal stage, which is where our estrogen's on a real roller coaster, and that can last from 2 to 12 years leading up to menopause. And after menopause, it is when you've had 1 full year with no periods. At that point, symptoms really start to subside, and the body's just adjusting to the hormone levels, the new hormone levels. Calm is then restored. And, it's important to say here, like, it's a wonderful phase, because it is, and so many women see it as being debilitating, but actually it's a really positive phase in life. And all of these phases are to be embraced, and hopefully none of them should be too debilitating if our bodies are in the right balance to be able to cope with them. We will, of course, have changes in hormones, and there'll be different symptoms that will experience, but they should not be detrimental. And it shouldn't feel like when you hit menopause, like you've got a condition, shouldn't feel like that at all. And so that's why it's really important to try and understand in advance, what to expect and how you can balance hormones so that your body can thrive through these phases. And that's why, so for example, if you understand more about perimenopause in your 30s, so that you can then take action, get the body set, really embrace the 11-point plan, so that, your symptoms when you hit the perimenopause stage are just much more manageable, and you feel like you can thrive. You feel like you can just go about your daily routine without things feeling too, without the symptoms feeling suppressing. Now, perimenopause can actually start as early as 35 in some women, but it is most common between the ages of 39 and 50. At this point, it's when the communication between the brain and ovary starts to change, and you'll start to see less regular cycles and changes to PMS. So different symptoms, mostly sleep, mood, hot flushes. And like I said, it can last 2 to 12 years leading up to menopause. So what are the symptoms? So most of these symptoms will occur during perimenopause and tend to settle by menopause, but with good nutrition and lifestyle habits in place. And it's really important to mention that, so that, you know, when you ease into menopause, it's easy, so to speak. Low estrogen, let's take hot flashes or hot flushes. It depends how you want to say it, potato, potato. But low estrogen sets the stage for these hot flushes. But adrenaline, your stress hormone, does the work. So therefore, hot flushes are like your very personal stress barometer, which feed back to you when you are pushing too hard. So it's like a signal to say, you know, if you've got these hot flushes, it's a signal to say you're taking on too much. It's time to listen to your body, cut back a bit, get enough sleep, rest, you know, and restoration. So that, and hopefully these will start to minimize. And you'll see things like fatigue, changes in libido, mood swings, nausea, headaches, all of these, hopefully with the right nutrition and lifestyle, can not feel like they are too detrimental. So I would say stress being a really important area to manage, not just to reduce hot flashes, but also just because it has such a huge impact on lots of areas of our health. It's also important that, and to note that calorie restriction, excessive exercise, these can all also exacerbate symptoms and hormonal imbalance, and because they put a stress on the body. Like I said, these symptoms don't have to be extreme with the right nutrition and the right lifestyle choices. So this is a really important slide because these are the key factors to address for any hormonal balance. It does not matter what phase you are in. To balance our hormones in the right way, we want to address these 5 factors. First one being to support good blood sugar balance. So blood sugar balancing is really important to support our metabolism and balance our hormones. Like I said before, if our blood sugars are not balanced, our insulin levels are likely to be high, and this can have a knock-on effect on our general hormonal balance. Stress, as I said too, sorry to reiterate this point, but it is really important. Stress, as I said too, plays a really big part in imbalancing our blood sugars. And we'll come on to that in a moment. Supporting the production of progesterone is also really important. We've talked about the benefits of that and the benefits of making sure that we have balance between estrogen and progesterone, so we're not shifting into an estrogen dominant zone. Supporting our liver, because we need to be able to detoxify estrogen from the body. And once the body has used it, we don't want it to be circulating. We want it to move out. Too much estrogen is not good to have in the body. The liver needs to work effectively to do that. And also the liver will work effectively to break down this estrogen, but we need to support digestive health and regular bowel movements to then remove the estrogen from the body. And finally, managing inflammation is really important, not just for hormonal health, but generally for health on a whole. Inflammation can have a huge impact, and we'll talk a little bit more about that now, because I'm sure not everyone is comfortable with the term inflammation. But when you have a cut in your finger, your immune system kicks into gear, and you might see it swelling. You might see the cut starting to repair. This is really important. It might be red. This is inflammation, and this is an important part of our immune system. We want that to kick into place. But the problem with inflammation is if this continues over a long period of time. So inflammation isn't just about, cutting your finger and then getting it better. Inflammation can be driven by, this immune response can be driven by many other lifestyle and diet factors that can impact our body's inflammation levels. And we don't want this constant activation of inflammation, because once it's chronic, it can imbalance the hormones and just affect our general health and lead to other health conditions. So typical inflammation symptoms can be general fatigue, like this feeling of malaise, low energy, mood, joint health issues, brain fog, headaches. These are all on a really low grade level. These can all be signs that there's quite a lot of inflammation going on in the body. The main drivers of inflammation, so the main drivers of our immune system constantly having to work, are stress, sugar, processed foods, trans fats, which we will come on to, not enough sleep, alcohol, unhealthy gut microbiome, and environmental toxins. So let's touch on blood sugars. So it's really important that we understand what blood sugar balancing is. So if you start your day with, say, a bowl of cereal like we've got here, and what happens is this is a refined food. So the sugar is very readily available to the body. It's not a great carbohydrate. It's kind of white carbohydrate, processed foods. So you have your cereal, the sugar comes flooding into the blood. The insulin will come along and say, right, we'll need to take this excess sugar and store it. So it'll store it as fat for later, like we talked about before. Then you get to snack time and lunch, and you have similar foods like a sandwich, a coffee, white bread, white pasta, sugary chocolate bar. And you have these peaks and troughs you can see from the graph in where sugar is really, the sugar in the blood is really high, then it drops, then it's high, then it drops. And this is blood sugar imbalance. And this can have a real myriad of negative effects on the body. It can make you feel tired. You can have cravings, poor concentration, mood swings, fuzziness, and also a lot of fat storage, because if this keeps happening over time, insulin's just continuing to store this excess sugar. This excess sugar isn't being used for energy, which is what it should be used for. So you just tend to put on more weight. And this slows down our metabolism, so we become much more sluggish. What we want is to eat foods and to have our blood sugars in a balanced manner. So we want to keep the graph in the green, thick green line. That's when we know, there will be natural little fluctuations of blood sugars because, when we eat, but they need to be kept to a minimum, as you can see in the green line. So like I was saying, lots of sugar can increase insulin, but it also puts a real stress on the body, increasing cortisol, and this then further drives up inflammation. Inflammation and stress are our two major impacts on the balance of our sex hormones. So it's really important that we try and keep those in check. So like I was saying, the general effects of blood sugars being imbalanced are low energy, fatigue, mood, irritability, worsening PMS symptoms, and fat storage around the middle. So this kind of brings us on to the 11-point plan. So what can you do? If you feel that your hormones are out of balance, or if you just feel like you want to prepare your body, keep your body in a really good, vibrant state so that you can embrace any of these phases you're in, so you can try and dull down any of the extreme symptoms that you might be facing each month, then the 11-point plan is key. And it covers those key 5 areas. And it is not about, like I said, doing everything at once. It's about understanding what you can do from a nutrition point of view and a lifestyle point of view, and then implementing it over time. So what we don't want is to make it feel like it's too much in one go. So this is all about restoring that hormone balance and that vibrancy. And the number one on the list. In fact, all 11 are really important. So I haven't ranked them because they're all important in their own right. But number 1 here is fat. Fat is really important relative to our more hormonal health, because these are all necessary components for cell function. So all of these components you see here, the omega-3, omega-6, saturated fats, dietary cholesterol, they're all really important for our cell function and integral in the creation of hormones and to allow hormones to communicate so things can get done throughout the body. A really important source of fat is omega-3. These are anti-inflammatory and crucial to support and balance inflammation in the body, which we've talked about a lot. And omega-3 fats not only produce our hormones, but are important for communication and transport of the hormones around the body. So this is so important. If you can get these sources of omega-3 fats into your diet, as regularly as possible, then you'll really benefit your hormonal health. Best source is oily fish. So if you can eat fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herrings, trout, these are all excellent sources of omega-3. Other options are plant sources, which a great one is flaxseed. Now, flaxseed, walnuts, and chia seeds are all great options. The only thing I would say here is when plant protein tends to be much harder in terms of its bioavailability in the body. So the body has to work a bit harder to excrete the nutrient density and use it in the body. But that is not to say these aren't important sources, especially if you don't have oily fish in your diet. Flax seeds, make sure they're milled. Try and have 1 to 2 tablespoons a day if you can. It's great. Walnuts, try and have no more than a handful, a palm-sized full a day. Chia seeds, a couple of tablespoons a day if you can, also great. Try and have, if you are a fish eater, try and keep your fish wild, so that's the best quality. So instead of farmed, and try and have 2 to 3 portions a week if you can. Now, I've been talking there about how incredible fats are, because they absolutely are. And I know we vilified fats in the past, but fats are so important. But what we really want to avoid are these trans fats. So vegetables, rapeseed oils, cooking sprays, margarines, these are all full of trans fats, and they are actually inflammatory to the body. So that's opposite of what the good fats can do. So we want to be avoiding these margarines, and swapping, being savvy about it. So instead of having the vegetable oils, the sunflower oils, swap with coconut oil for cooking, or ghee or avocado oil. Use good quality organic grass-fed butter instead of margarine, and also try and minimize takeaways, because what happens there is these trans fats are often cheaper. So these, like vegetable oils, are often cheaper. So takeaways will use them, but they'll reuse them. So they're even more toxic to the body, and they're even more detrimental to hormonal health if they've fried many different portions of food in them. So they're just refrying the oil, which is really bad for our health. So I would say try and minimize those where you can as well. And that also includes like long life baked goods as well. That can be an issue too. Protein with every meal. So this is key for balancing our blood sugar. So anyone who feels like they are getting the afternoon slump, or they're sluggish, they're tired, their mood swings, so their blood sugars are slightly out of balance, protein with every meal is key to help starting to balance this back out. Protein's also really good to help support the liver, detoxify estrogen, which is what we want it to be able to do well. So, those people who use the detox juice fasts, they're not really supporting the liver effectively, because these juices don't have any protein in them, and the amino acids in our protein are crucial to support the different pathways the liver needs to go through to detoxify the body. So actually, just be wary of those types of fads and make sure you're getting enough protein. And protein also keeps us fuller for longer. It will manage cravings, balance energy dips, support our sleep and mood. Keep us satiated. It supports lean muscle mass, which I know a lot of people know. So really, a good quality protein with every meal and every snack, especially at breakfast, because you start your day right, you're likely to end your day well, is crucial. So the best sources are on this list here. Fish, like I said, try and keep it wild. Have your meat organic or grass-fed where possible. You want the animals to be free to roam, so that there's less stress hormones in their body passing on to you. You want less antibiotic use with the meats, so trying to have them organic is important. You want them grass-fed, because if they're corn-fed, that can be inflammatory. So all of this can leach into our bodies. So we just need to be a little savvy where we can, to make sure that the choice of quality of food we have is a bit beneficial, basically. And so you can read that list, but also just a note on dairy at the bottom. So too much dairy, cheese can spike insulin levels and increase our blood sugars. And part of that is the A1 casein protein in dairy is also inflammatory, and that can have a real impact on balancing our hormones. So definitely one to have in moderation. How much protein? So you want to be aiming for about 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if it's 1.5 grams and you are 70 kgs in weight, you're going to have about 105 grams of protein per day. So let's have a little look at some of the sources. So, you know, a great source is chicken. So meat tends to be a really high source of protein. There's also plant protein. Like if you look at this list, it's great because it gives you an indication. Like nut butter can be 4 grams per tablespoon. That's what you want to have a day. A cup of broccoli. So a portion of broccoli is 5 grams of protein. So it's actually, you know, it can build up. And if you're going to have 7 to 8 portions of veg a day, which is what we want you to aim for if you can, that is going to really, you know, that's going to boost your protein levels. If you are a big exerciser, aim for about 1.5 to 1.8 grams of protein, even nearly 2 grams, depending on how much you exercise per kilogram. So just get a bit more protein in there if you exercise quite regularly. So here's some snack ideas. So I was talking about protein and trying to have it with every meal, because often our snacks, we snack because maybe we're a bit tired and we want to boost. So we tend to go for the sugary snacks. We really want to move away from that and go for more protein-based snacks, because that's what's going to make us feel better. And that's what's going to knock the cycle of feeling tired and of cravings. So we really want to try and nip that in the bud. And that is having things like hummus with carrot sticks, or a nut butter with an apple, or just a handful of nuts, no more than your palm size, with a piece of low sugar fruit like some berries, some raspberries maybe, some smoked salmon with spinach and egg. These are options that you can even get from takeaway places, you know, if you are when we go back to the office, hopefully very soon. So next is carbohydrates. So this is really important. A lot of people sometimes think, oh, you know, try and cut out the carbs to help weight loss, etc. It isn't about no carbs. Getting the right carbs is crucial here, especially for balancing our blood sugars as well. Beans, pulses, brown rice, sweet potato, rye sourdough, root veg. These all provide a slower breakdown and release of energy instead of spikes and drops. And like we said before, we want to remove these spikes and drops because they are detrimental for our health, including our hormone health. These sources of carbohydrates also are loaded with fiber, which will help clear estrogen out of the body because they support bowel movements. That's really important. And they also have loads of other nutrients in them too, which are beneficial for our health. So in comparison to refined carbohydrates like the cereals I was talking about, the white pasta, those are inflammatory and they break down into sugar so quickly. Whereas carbs can really help regulate our hormones if they are good quality and the right sources. And they can regulate our hormones through, for example, they can help us make serotonin, our happy hormone, and that will then help us make melatonin. And our melatonin is our sleep hormone to help us get to sleep. So it's just this continuous balance and being able to feed this hormonal balance and knowing what to do to making the right choices to be able to do that. This is a sweet potato and salmon recipe, which I will be sending out after this webinar. Fiber. So I talked a little bit about fiber there when it came to carbohydrates. Fiber is so important for our body, and it supports our bowel movements. So, for example, if you're constipated, then that's no good for hormonal balance because it stops toxins from being released, and there's like a buildup of toxins in the body, and that's not, and they get recycled and put more pressure on and stress on the liver. So that is not good to, and we want to be excreting hormones so that we don't have this estrogen dominance. So regular bowel movements are really important. The best source of fiber are all the different colored fruits and vegetables. These are really important. Firstly, they contain phytonutrients, which are basically plant compounds, plant nutrients that provide the body with a myriad of benefits that support hormonal health and just general health. What we want to be aiming for is 8 portions of fruit and 2 portions of veg. And you can see here in these lists, so different colored vegetables have different benefits in the body. And that's why we say, really try and eat a rainbow. Okay, tips for veg. So organic or not, we often get asked this question. If you can afford organic, then fantastic. But, I don't do all organic. There's a really good website is www.pan-UK or the Environmental Working Group. You can Google them. So they basically list the amount of pesticides and toxins in non-organic fruit and veg or produce. And so then, and they tell you what's the best produce to buy organic and what you can get away with buying non-organic. So for example, to keep it simple, anything that's got a thick skin, like bananas, avocados, I never buy organic because the pesticides and toxins are less likely to penetrate through the skin and hit the actual fruit and veg that I'll be eating. So I will just buy those non-organic, but for something that has a thin skin like berries, I'll always buy organic, just because of the likelihood that there's going to be more amounts of toxins in the skin if they're non-organic. Another rule of thumb is make sure, if you're buying non-organic, to peel the skin off, but for example, in sweet potato, most of the nutrients in a sweet potato are in the skin. So buying that organic means you don't have to peel it and you're going to get loads of nutrients from that. So just bear that in mind. Half our plate should always be veg. So good balanced rule of thumb with our plate is half our plate. So say this is our plate, half veg, quarter protein, quarter carbs, and then mix the fats in between those. Chop our veg at the last minute because that retains the nutrient density, and try and steam more than fry your foods, because frying your foods will increase the loss of nutrients. Number 5 is our cruciferous veg. So basically, this is a key family of vegetables for hormonal health. This type of veg belongs to the Brassica family, and they contain 3 really key compounds, sulforaphane, DIM, and indole-3-carbonyl, which can improve estrogen metabolism by promoting the breakdown of estrogen via the safest pathway in our body. And that's what we really want to encourage. So these are amazing, and I always try and encourage my clients to get them in their diet. You want to have, so if you're having about 8 portions of veg a day, try and make 3 or 4 of those cruciferous veg. And here's the list, but you can easily Google a list of cruciferous veg. Liver supportive herbs and spices. So this is another great thing to just try and weave into your daily diet. Many herbs and spices provide like these phytochemicals that we were talking about, so these plant nutrients that will help support inflammation and support liver detoxification as well. So you can bring these in by having them in stir-frieds, salads, smoothies, in teas, just trying to bring it in that way. Digestive health. So we've talked about fiber and supporting digestive health. We really want to be encouraging bowel movements 1 to 2 times a day, and we want them to be formed. We don't want them to be really loose, and we don't want our bowel movements to be strained either, which would indicate potential constipation. We need to make sure that any excess hormone load can be excreted out of the body And so that can be done through continued bowel movements. So the next is, and another really good thing to look at is to understand a bit more about fermented foods. So we really want to be feeding our digestive health through balancing the good bacteria, and that includes food sources like kimchi, kombucha. We want to limit our gluten and dairy because that can put strain on our digestive health. And we want to encourage fiber, like I said, but also because fiber feeds the good bacteria. So garlics, onions are examples of prebiotic fiber, and you can look up lots more online as well. A really good rule of thumb is to chew they say up to 30 times before swallowing a forkful, but chewing as much as you can will really stimulate our digestive system. So it means that it puts less pressure on digestion as we go through the digestive tract. And so just by chewing and by relaxing and being mindful as we eat can really support our digestive health. And also keeping our colon hydrated. I mean, it's a simple tip, but alcohol is so, water, I was about to say alcohol is so important. Water is so important. We want to be aiming for about 2 liters a day. And that's just, I know, rule of thumb, and everyone knows to do that, but it's really important we don't forget. Beware of alcohol. So that now I knew I was coming on to alcohol. This won't be the most popular tip, I know, because so many of us love a glass of alcohol, but it's just important to be aware that it drives inflammation. And, even any sort of reduction of alcohol can be beneficial to help reduce that inflammatory load. Minimizing toxic exposure. So this is really important. There are toxins everywhere. We can't really get away from them, but there are certain toxins that are endocrine disrupting chemicals that can really have an impact on our health that we can control. And so they can burden our liver, and they will in time contribute to the disease. And also they can actually contribute to diseases such as obesity as well, because these are known as obesogens, where these toxins can actually enlarge our fat cells. So understanding toxin exposure and trying to minimize that can be really helpful for our health, and definitely helpful for our hormonal balance. So for example, plastics, pesticides, chemicals, water systems, these are all parabens and phthalates. These are all toxins. And so what we could do is swap our plastics, for example, for ceramic or glass or stainless steel, and use those instead. Change our tap water, which can often have chemicals in it, unfortunately, and traces of old medication and things like that. Swap that for more filtered water. Buy a Brita filter, for example. Use more natural skincare, or even swap household cleaning products. Like I use a brand called Method now. I didn't swap all of these things overnight. It took time, but gradually I've, removed all the plastic, and I've changed all my household products to more natural ones. So I use EcoVer and Method instead. And Method's definitely much more affordable than EcoVer, and so it doesn't feel like too much of a financial burden to swap either. So this is important to minimize our toxic exposure from a hormone point of view too. We're coming towards the end. So this stress and sleep, and then with point number 10, but it is so important. It has a major impact on hormonal health, and it comes in many forms, such as, too much or too little exercise can be a stress. The wrong nutrition, poor relationships, if our mind isn't in the right, if we aren't in the right mindset, if our job is not right for us or too strenuous, financial worries. And there's a lot of things in our lifestyle. So if we're sitting too sedentary, so like we said, there too little exercise, but just not even moving at all, that can be a problem. So these can all increase the burden of stress on our body, and it is something we can control. Some of these areas, like for example, we can control everything. I went through a period of stress that wasn't, that I couldn't foresee, and it really impacted my hormonal balance, my metabolism. I put on a lot of weight, and it really affected my mood. But knowing what I know, I ended up creating a plan over a 9-month period. And actually, I was able to effectively use this 11-point plan in different areas that supported me. And by supporting mostly the stress side of things, I really started to see my metabolism kick back into place. I really increased my protein to help support me there too. And my blood sugars rebalanced. I was less tired. I gained more energy. And I just started to see a rebalancing of my hormones and of my general well-being. And so, little things to support our stress and small areas that are, within this 11-point plan can really make a difference. And it's just about building upon these as well. And another area is sleep. Prioritizing sleep is so important. We want to be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. That's really important for our health, especially for our liver, because our liver does most of its work at night. And in order to regenerate and support our body, we need to be asleep. So these are some tips to get more of, to kind of make you feel good, reduce stress. So meditation, deep breathing, which actually I do both, and they really make a difference. And I do them morning and night. And it doesn't have to be a long period of time. Just work it into your day where you can. Get outside, hug when we can hug pets, humans. Just do things that make you feel good. Work them into your diary. Really look at areas that nourish you, and just make sure you're doing more of them. And that can be being in nature, that can be laughing, it can just be having time to yourself to read. Any of those things, just try and make sure that you have that in your, as part of your diet and lifestyle, balance. So what we really want here is to be trying to balance within our 24 hours a day. So we don't want 6 hours in bed and then 8 hours running ragged. We just want to have a balance so that we are in a more state of relax and restoration. And that's called the parasympathetic state, to really bring down that stress. So, like I was saying, for all of those things on the previous list, taking a bath, being with nature, animals, laughter. We want to try and promote that. And we want to try and dampen down and move away from this constant sympathetic state, which is actually a default in our society at the moment, because we've so many stimulants around us, so many things that can push us into that stressful state. So, stay away, have time away from your phone. Take breaks from the news. Don't watch it every day. Remove yourself from the laptop and phone and read instead. Only have stimulants if you want a coffee, have one in the morning, but have a cutoff point where you have none, so that it allows your body to start to relax, ready for bed. Exercise, get the right exercise. We'll talk a bit about that in a second. Make sure you're nourishing yourself with all the foods we've just talked about as well. So don't push yourself into a state of stress by having loads of sugar and stimulants. So it's all about trying to get that balance. I want to just talk briefly about this amazing mineral, magnesium. And that's partly because as we approach the end, it's important to talk about this nutrient, because it's really excellent for calming the body and really bringing down stress and reducing anxiety and promoting sleep. So this is a #1 mineral for painful periods and headaches, calms the nervous system and regulates our HPA axis, so our stress axis, and it's anti-inflammatory, and it really helps the liver to detoxify. So try and make sure you've got enough magnesium. And if we're really stressed, our body goes through a lot of magnesium. So if you find that you've got a lot of stress and anxiety, increase your magnesium, because your body's going to be using a lot of it. Sources include almonds, cashews, oats, pecans. Also, you can absorb magnesium through having like an Epsom salt bath or a foot bath. That's really important as well. So try and bring this into your weekly routine as well. And it's really relaxing to have something like an Epsom salt bath too. Finally, is building muscle. So strength training and muscle building is so important. It's an important part of improving our metabolism. It's an important part of balancing our blood sugars, which I talked about before, will have a really good knock-on effect on balancing our hormones and just our general health. So building strength training and resistance training are really good for that. And it is also useful to know that every 10 years after the age of 35, we lose 3 to 5% of our muscle mass. And this also means the body becomes better at storing fat, and that causes hormone changes as well. So that's even more reason to look at bringing in exercise such as resistance training. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can benefit from it. And building lean muscle actually supports fat loss as well, and it boosts new brain cells. So it's really good for our brain health as we age too. And that is the 11 points for the 11-point plan. So just to quickly recap, embrace good fats, increase protein every single meal, good quality carbs, fiber, lots of color, make sure you sneak in those cruciferous veg, get the herbs and spices in where you can, support your digestive health, also plenty of water, that should be in there too, reduce and minimize alcohol, minimize toxins, support stress, promote good sleep, and build muscle. Those are that 11 points. Please don't feel like you need to do all of those at once. Just pick one for the next week and then build on that going forward. So if you embrace good fats next week, then the following week, embrace good fats, and maybe try and do a bit of bring in resistance training. You know, it doesn't have to be too onerous. So, useful at the end of any webinar to kind of think about what you've taken from it, and just think about what you might do over the next couple of weeks, your intentions. It's good to set intentions going forward. Like I've said the whole way through, slow and steady wins the race. Doing too much can actually put you off, and it's not sustainable. So yeah, and follow the 80-20 rule. I do, I don't throw 100% at it. I allow myself that 20% where I might have like a day where, I'm not exercising as well, or I don't do exercise, or, I don't, I maybe have like a treat, allow that, because that's okay. The rest of the time, if your nutrition and lifestyle are on point, then that's all you need. Also, we'll be sending some additional resources. There'll be recipes for you to tap into, which will complement what we've talked about today. So thank you so much for your time. I hope that you've enjoyed it. There is a lot to take in, but, please just make notes, and you can make a plan for yourself over the next, 3 to 6 months, and see how you get on. Thank you very much. Take care, and goodbye.